The story begins with a young boy standing impatiently outside a luxury condo, repeatedly ringing the doorbell in frustration. He can't hide his resentment toward his father, who promised he could live alone, only to assign a maid to watch over him instead. After another loud buzz, the door suddenly swings open. Startled, the boy freezes as the maid immediately scolds him for non-stop ringing. Despite his flustered expression and small stature, she quickly straightens herself and offers him a polite smile, addressing him as Rikuto-sama, the future head of the Yamajuji family. Sakanue Kana formally explains that she will serve as his personal assistant. As Rikuto keeps staring at her, Kana tilts her head in confusion and asks what's wrong. Trying to compliment her, he awkwardly comments on how tall she is, but Kana instantly misunderstands, covering her chest in embarrassment and urging him to phrase things more carefully. Irritated, Rikuto loudly clarifies that he was talking about her height, but when Kana shyly admits she thought he meant something else, he explodes in disbelief, yelling that she shouldn't say something that outrageous during their very first meeting. Still gloomy and embarrassed, she seriously says that commenting on someone's appearance directly may make them disliked. He awkwardly apologizes, telling her to stop calling him Bochama since he is only a first-year student, but when she calls him boss, it feels odd to him. After a short pause, she leans forward with a blushing face and sparkling eyes, asking to call him Goshujin-sama, which makes him blush and fluster. Shocked by his reaction, she decides to report it to her superior. He immediately shouts, clearly annoyed, and tells her to just call him normally. With a soft, blushed smile, she suggests calling him Rikun. He instantly gets annoyed, rejecting her overly informal behavior and telling her not to treat him like a kid. Realizing he dislikes it, she turns sad, though she finds this name oddly cute. She then curiously asks how his friends address him. He replies that they call him Rikuto, or Rikun. Seeing her surprised expression, he suddenly shouts, angrily clarifying that she is not his friend. Bowing down with a flushed face, she apologizes and asks if calling him by that name now means they are friends. He, annoyed, shouts at her to speak formally like she did in the opening greeting. Still unsure, she emotionally suggests calling him Rikuto-sama. He immediately refuses. Seeing his disgusted reaction, she sadly asks if he wants girls to obey him. He shouts in disbelief, reminding her that she is already his maid. Seeing her serious, emotional tone and her request for him to inform her whenever he needs help, he agrees, though her sudden change in behavior leaves him confused. That confusion deepens when she calls him back and, with a blushed face and cute smile, suggests he address her as Kana-sama. He immediately shouts in annoyance, saying there is no reason to call her by that name. After angrily entering his room, he forcefully slams the door shut. Slamming his hands on the table, he shouts at his father for assigning that maid to him. Then, still flustered, he thinks about her tall figure and absent-mindedly stares at a magazine featuring a similarly built model. Realizing what he is doing, he quickly becomes embarrassed and nervously hides the magazine just as Kana enters the room holding a cup of tea. Seeing his flustered expression, she curiously asks if he was doing something. He shouts at her for not knocking before entering. Calmly, she places the tea on the table and apologizes for not being aware of the house rules. He, still annoyed, snaps back, saying it's just basic common sense. Misunderstanding him again, she assumes he must be working late and looks at him with admiration. He quickly corrects her, saying he wasn't working at all. Hurt and emotional, she feels upset, thinking he is hiding things even though they are close. Annoyed, he looks away and coldly tells her to stop calling him Bochama, reminding her they are just meeting for the first time and have no close relationship. Without responding to that, she instead asks him not to call her formally, saying she will help him in any case. His confused mind starts overthinking her words, making him blush as he assumes a bold meaning. He immediately shouts at her in anger, telling her not to say things like that. Confused by his angry behavior, she calmly explains that it is also her duty. Still seeing his annoyed expression, she sadly yet professionally assures him that she is fully capable despite her tall build. She then insists that she will not report anything to his father. He remains irritated but becomes slightly uneasy when she steps closer and persistently asks him to show what he was doing. Feeling embarrassed and flustered, his face turns red as he is not ready to be judged. Standing over him and asking why he is so shy makes him even more annoyed. He shouts that she is overstepping and that peeking like this isn't part of a maid's role. Innocently, she asks if he doesn't like her as a maid. Hearing his harsh words, he immediately feels guilty. She then smiles politely, with a faint blush, saying that although she may be unprofessional, she is still his maid, and wishes to serve him properly. She adds that he seems to have a heavy workload, but is getting distracted. Then she steps closer and gently asks him to tell her everything without being shy. As she leans closer and asks what he is hiding, he quickly steps back, flustered, and warns her to behave more modestly. Calmly, she smiles and says she was only talking about his homework, asking him to show it. He exhales in relief, realizing she meant homework all along. Still confused, he angrily turns to his desk and explains everything. Just then, she casually holds up a magazine with a model picture and wonders if she can help him with that too, making him spit out his tea in shock. Later, when she looks at his difficult math homework, she becomes confused. He glances at her and annoyedly says she is useless to him. As he continues working, she keeps glancing at the magazine, unintentionally distracting him. He angrily shouts at her to stop interrupting and tells her to leave him alone. She calmly replies that knowing his preferences is also part of her duty, which irritates him further as he doesn't want her to get so involved in his personal matters. Kana then pauses and gets confused when he suddenly stops working. Instead, he looks at her and asks about her outfit. She informs, it is her maid uniform. This reminds him of his mother's maid's more classical outfit. Noticing his reaction, she looks disheartened and asks if he dislikes her outfit. Feeling guilty, he quickly clarifies that it's not that, just that it looks too bold, but he is shocked when she quietly turns away, seemingly hurt by her uniform. After she leaves, he sinks into guilt, feeling he was too harsh. Although her bold appearance still unsettles him, what confuses him more is how suddenly she started obeying him instead of arguing like before. He scolds himself for thinking too much about her, reminding himself that she is just a maid assigned to him. With a sigh, he tries to convince himself that her strange behavior will soon lead to her being replaced, which would make things more relaxing. His thoughts are interrupted when she suddenly returns and asks for his opinion about her new outfit. He immediately tells her again to knock before entering. She calmly gives the same excuse, saying she was unaware of the rules. Seeing her in a much bolder, more revealing outfit makes him flustered. As she comes closer to serve tea and asks if he really dislikes it, he exhales and says he doesn't care about her outfit. But she keeps insisting, wanting a clear answer, which frustrates him. Unable to deal with her pushy attitude, he calmly repeats that he has no issue. Finally, she understands and sits beside him. However, the moment he glances at her again, he becomes embarrassed and flustered. In confusion, he tells her to wear her earlier uniform instead, as it seems less revealing than this one. After an exhausting day, Rikuto finally relaxes in the warm bath, still irritated that his father had sent a maid to supervise him when he was supposed to be living independently. Just as he begins to unwind, he hears Kana's voice from outside the bathroom. Annoyed, he immediately complains that he does not need anyone watching over him. Sitting in front of the mirror, he answers shortly when she asks whether the water temperature is comfortable. To his shock, Kana calmly announces that she will now assist him by washing his back. Before he can properly refuse, she steps inside, wrapped carefully in a towel. Rikuto instantly raises his voice, insisting that he is perfectly capable of bathing on his own. Kana politely explains that caring for him is part of her duty as his personal maid. Seeing his stubborn expression, she tilts her head curiously and asks whether he has always bathed alone. Embarrassed, Rikuto replies that he is already a first-year student and no longer a child. Kana lets out a small smile before teasing him that bathing alone every night sounds lonely. With a cheerful expression, she jokingly offers to become his official bath partner, once again calling him Bochama. Rikuto immediately protests, telling her to stop using that nickname. Ignoring his complaints, Kana gently begins washing his back while continuing to chat casually, mentioning that relaxing baths are more enjoyable when shared with someone else. Although still annoyed by her persistence, Rikuto eventually gives up arguing for the moment and allows her to continue. Feeling awkward about the unusual situation, he stiffly tells her to hurry up and finish already. As Kana rinses his back with warm water, she suddenly panics and hurriedly tells him not to turn around. Confused by her sudden reaction, he instinctively glances toward the mirror before quickly turning away again in embarrassment. His face burns red as he stares straight ahead, trying his hardest not to look back again. While Kana calmly continues washing his back as though nothing happened, Rikuto grows increasingly self-conscious, wondering if she even realizes he noticed. Even though curiosity keeps tempting him to glance behind him again, he stubbornly resists, worried she might misunderstand or report him to his father later. When Kana leans closer to adjust the shower head, Rikuto nearly jumps in surprise. However, after catching a glimpse in the mirror, he finally relaxes slightly upon realizing she is wearing a swimsuit underneath the towel after all. That small bit of common sense at least reassures him a little. At night, Kana suggests he sleep early, saying it's part of her duty to ensure his well-being. He gets annoyed and angrily tells her not to call him Bakama, insisting he is an adult and will sleep later. However, she keeps insisting that as a maid, she must make sure he rests properly, since sleeping late could affect his studies and health. With no other option, he finally agrees. but he immediately shouts in shock when he sees her lying next to him on the bed, calmly saying that watching over him is also part of her duty. He angrily shouts at her, telling her to go home since staying there is not her job. Realizing this, she sadly agrees to visit him again tomorrow. As she quietly walks away holding her bag, still dressed in the maid outfit, he feels strangely confused, yet remains silent. As night passes, he reaches out at 6:30 in the morning to turn off the alarm, but suddenly, another hand shuts it off before him. Half asleep, he ignores it and goes back to sleep, only to suddenly realize something feels strange. He instantly wakes up in shock, seeing Kana sleeping beside him in her nightdress. Loudly, he demands to know why she is sleeping there, but he becomes even more annoyed when she sleepily asks for 5 more minutes. His frustration deepens when she confusedly asks what he is doing there. Without waiting for an answer, she lazily moves her arms and pulls him closer, suggesting they sleep together a little longer. He quickly regains his composure and shouts at her to wake up, but seeing her so peacefully asleep, he helplessly decides to let her rest, since it is easier for him as well. However, his heart suddenly races and his cheeks redden when she softly calls his name in her sleep. As he turns back and notices her exposed posture, he immediately looks away and firmly composes himself, reminding himself that as the next head of the Ayamajuji family, he must act properly. He quickly decides to change into his school uniform and leave for school, but freezes in shock when the half-asleep Kana suddenly hugs him from behind. He immediately tells her to wash her face properly. Still drowsy, she realizes he is changing clothes and casually offers to help him get dressed. Although he annoyedly tries to stop her, she stubbornly insists with sleepy eyes, telling him to raise his hands before trying to help him prepare for school. Looking at her sleepy face, he softly suggests that she should rest on the bed instead, but without listening, she drowsily continues helping him change clothes. His embarrassment only grows, his cheeks turning red when, still half asleep, she suddenly falls against him while calling him Bochama. Helplessly flustered, he quietly begs her to stop calling him by that name. After that, she bows down and wishes him good luck for the day, while he, holding his school bag, rudely reminds her not to call him by that name. Although he notices Kana also leaving the apartment and even following him into the elevator, he curiously asks why she is seeing him off for so long. She casually explains that she also has work in the same direction. Later, when she confusedly asks why he is not using a luxury car, he replies that he wants to live normally. So, as he steps onto the bus, Kana reminds him to tap his card before entering. He immediately glances back at her in annoyance, insisting he already knows that. After that, both silently sit beside each other on the bus. But when she even enters the school with him, he angrily shouts at her for continuing to follow him there as well. She calmly reminds him that taking care of him is her duty as a maid. This only irritates him further, and he loudly tells her to just stay back at the house and do maid work instead. However, she politely explains that household chores are not her only responsibility. Even more annoyed, he argues back that maid duties have always been limited to housework, both in the past and now. Seeing a maid inside the school, the girls stare and whisper among themselves, wondering if she is really the maid serving the Bochama of the Ayamajuji family. Hearing them question whether she is truly his maid or even his girlfriend gives him a headache and leaves him completely fed up. When Kana calmly says she does not mind if he wants a break from her, he annoyedly tells her to take the matter more seriously. Suddenly, one of his friends calls out to him, but before the boy can even approach, Kana instantly steps in front of Rikuto like a bodyguard. Her sharp glare immediately scares his friend. Embarrassed, Rikuto quickly tells her to stop shielding him. Confused, his friend asks if she is some kind of cosplayer, and Rikuto awkwardly explains that she is the maid his father assigned to him. Kana then asks Rikuto about the boy, so he introduces him as his childhood friend, Tenma, the young master of the Nanguji family. After that, she politely introduces herself as well. Learning all this, Tenma becomes slightly flustered by her presence and casually asks about her age. However, she bluntly replies that directly asking a woman's age is rude. Tenma immediately regains composure, bows politely, and apologizes. He then asks why she came there and jokingly wonders if he should make a move on her. But Kana instantly and firmly rejects the idea, leaving Tenma embarrassed by her strict response. Watching her remain completely unimpressed by Tenma surprisingly leaves Rikuto impressed by her instead. Even after that, Tenma continues asking for her contact information. Although she immediately refuses, he politely explains that it could be necessary in case Rikuto is ever in danger, and that she could also contact him regarding Rikuto's errands. After hearing his reasoning, she finally agrees to exchange contacts, But before she can do so, Rikuto instantly grabs her hand and hurriedly tells Tenma they need to enter the classroom since they are getting late. Even while being dragged away with an arm around his shoulder, Tenma still waves back at Kana, loudly saying he hopes to meet her again properly next time. Kana watches them in confusion until a school guard approaches, reminding her that outsiders are not allowed inside the school. The guard then comments on her unusual outfit, leaving her puzzled. After school, walking back home, he feels uneasy about Kana, wondering how she would be managing things at home. He did not expect anything unusual from her, yet he remains confused after she followed him to school and even after Tenma tried to take her contact. Lost in thought, he reaches his apartment and opens the door, only to freeze as Kana, in an unusual outfit, is cleaning the floor. Shocked, he quickly closes the door, convinced only she could do something like this. After a moment, Kana opens the door herself and calmly welcomes him inside. He looks disappointed, holding his head, expecting something more normal, before suddenly shouting at her for wearing such outfit while cleaning. She looks at him, shocked and curious, seeing how familiar he seems with that kind of outfit at such a young age. He immediately denies it, explaining that Tenma was the one who informed him about such things. Hearing this, Kana recalls Tenma's words and considers that he might be influencing Rikuto's innocent and healthy mindset. Annoyed, Rikuto again clarifies that it is not him. In fact, she is the one responsible for all these misunderstandings. She finally explains that she chose this outfit because there are many swimsuit posters of girls in his room. Realizing the situation, he immediately becomes serious and denies it strongly, saying that although he has posters of idol Mikasama in his room as a big fan, it is not because of her body. He admires her personality and uses the posters as motivation, since they show her dedication to practice, swimming, and physical training. He then angrily shouts that people often fail to understand her effort and instead only focus on her appearance. Kana is shocked when he energetically and loudly clarifies that he admires Mikasama for her cute smile, bright personality, live streams, singing covers, and voice acting, along with how she constantly challenges herself. He clearly states that any erotic meaning was never his intention. Realizing his true intention, she feels guilty and immediately apologizes, deciding to do her best as a maid, like Mikasama does in her own way of working hard. She resumes cleaning seriously and thoroughly. Meanwhile, he watches her still working in a swimsuit, his mind completely scrambled by the situation. At noon, he is frustrated while playing a game, angrily losing to an opponent who is using a cheap character. Kana asks if he is playing the same game, and when he glances back at her in confusion and asks if she knows it, she calmly says she used to play it a long time ago, surprising him. He returns to his game, but she silently watches him. Seeing him lose again, she becomes concerned and suggests he should not make such aggressive moves. He, annoyed and frustrated, shouts at her to keep quiet. After losing again, he hopelessly asks her to play, and she agrees to a single match with a serious attitude. Sitting beside him and holding the controller, she asks if he has the arcade version too. Although he does, she smiles confidently, deciding to go easy on him, while he remains annoyed at her continuing to call him Bachama. The game starts, and in seconds he makes her lose while taunting her for using a weak character. She blames the machine and her lack of recent practice, then determinedly announces she will win the next round, even forgetting the one-match condition. Now fully serious, she tries harder, but Rikuto defeats her again quickly, causing her character to fall. She then blames the controller and its hard buttons, as she confidently says she is getting used to it and wants to try again. Rikuto becomes confused, wondering if she actually wants to continue playing or not. As both of them continue playing energetically, Rikuto smiles, realizing it has been a long time since he sat next to someone like this, or even visited a friend's house. He briefly thinks about inviting Tenma over, but immediately dismisses the idea, imagining how he might meet Kana there in a friendly situation. At the same time, Kana happily calls out to him with a slightly blushed face, saying she is enjoying playing with him as she hasn't played like this in a long time. He, with an unnoticeable smile, agrees. They continue playing late into the night, with each match becoming more competitive until the final one. Eventually, he tells her to go home. The next day, she finally wins a match on her own. When he returns home after school, she greets him holding the controller and suggests another match, saying she has practiced and finally won. He denies it and tells her to focus on her duties instead. At night, as she is leaving the house, she informs him that she will visit again tomorrow, leaving him shocked. Noticing his strange expression, she asks what is wrong. He He explains that tomorrow is Saturday and asks if she is not taking time off or if she shifts her off day to Sunday or another day. His shock deepens when she calmly replies that maids do not have days off in her case. Hearing this, he immediately and loudly tells her to take a break, insisting that there are proper labor rules and regulations that ensure even maids must have days off. She innocently replies that even weekly manga artists work without resting, but he quickly corrects her, saying she is not an artist. Still, she insists that since household chores never stop, there should be no day off. He becomes emotional and firmly corrects her again, saying she is a maid who needs rest, and also informs her that he already has plans for his own day off. She still tries to insist, but he finally raises his voice and orders her to take the break, telling her he will speak to his father himself about it. Next day, he wakes up yawning, feeling relaxed after sleeping late with no one around. Walking into the kitchen, he pours milk into a glass and looks around the huge room, getting annoyed again that despite asking for a normal room, his father still chose such a large one. Glancing at the kitchen, he realizes that without Kana, he has to make breakfast himself. Lazily deciding to skip it until lunch, he plans to play games instead, but he suddenly hears the door open. Running toward it, he is shocked to see Kana standing there in casual clothes, even though it is her day off. Calmly, she enters and explains that she came on her own purpose. Then she asks if he has eaten yet and offers to make something quick for him. He agrees, and within a few minutes she apologizes for making him wait and places breakfast on the table, fried eggs and toast. When he asks if she has eaten, she denies and says she will eat after him. Sitting on a chair, he invites her to join, but she immediately refuses, saying it would be unethical as she is a maid. He insists again, reminding her it is her day off. Finally, she agrees with a slightly blushed smile, and both sit down for breakfast. While eating the toast, he smiles slightly, thinking about how she suddenly showed up and even made breakfast for him, feeling confused about his own emotions toward the unusual Kana. But he is shocked when, during breakfast, she innocently asks if she will play games with him after eating. Surprised, he asks if she really came just to play games, and she hesitantly denies it. After a few days, while he is studying, she enters the room holding tea and observing his work. As usual, he advises her to knock before entering, but she casually ignores it and looks at his hard work instead. He mentions his midterms, and she admires his good grades, saying that he must not need to work very hard. However, he seriously explains that he studies not just for marks, but to maintain the reputation of being the next head of the Ayamajuji family. She is genuinely impressed by his mindset. He then corrects her, saying he is mainly studying hard to maintain his freedom, which he only recently gained. If his grades drop, he could be sent back under stricter control again. Realizing how serious he is, she offers to help. He immediately refuses, saying she is even worse at studying. She suggests playing games instead, but he dismisses that too as a distraction. Deciding to genuinely support him, she brings snacks and asks about his weak subjects. He admits biology and chemistry are difficult, so she offers a memorization quiz, which he agrees to. Smiling, she starts questioning him. She asks about the cell with a nucleus, and he confidently answers, eukaryotic cell. Seeing her pause, he grows uncertain. She then explains that eukaryotic cells have a nucleus, while prokaryotic cells lack organelles, including a nucleus, and tells him to listen properly till the end. He looks confused and shouts that it is not a quiz, but she ignores him and smiles, offering double marks for a correct answer. He protests again, but she continues, jokingly saying the reward could be a kiss, which makes him flustered. Realizing she is serious, he asks if she means it literally. She calmly confirms it is not a joke, which embarrasses him further. She resumes the quiz, asking about organelles in an animal cell, and he correctly answers all 5. She happily praises him with double points, but his mind stays stuck on her earlier reward. She then moves to the next question about DNA bases, and he answers correctly again. Impressed, she prepares to continue, but he suddenly stops her, red-faced, asking her to remove the reward since just thinking about it is distracting him. She finds his reaction innocent and amusing, while he angrily tells her not to tease him. So, without the reward, she continues the quiz and later genuinely admires him, saying he is doing well and will likely get good marks. Seeing him still studying hard, she politely tells him not to push himself too much, saying that although studies are important, his health matters more. He agrees. She then picks up the tea tray and says she is leaving. He quietly appreciates her effort. Before going, she turns back and casually offers to help him with anything if needed, then closes the door. Left alone, he stares at the door, overthinking her words and briefly imagining some exaggerated reward, then quickly shakes his head at his own stupidity and finally goes to bed early. Next day, when he returns home tired, she immediately asks about his marks. He says he is unsure of the result, but assures her he likely did well, which makes her happy. Noticing her pale face, he gets concerned and asks if she is okay. She denies it, but suddenly feels dizzy and collapses. He quickly bends down in panic, asking if she is fine. Weakly, she apologizes, saying she relaxed too much after hearing his good results and overexerted herself. He checks her condition and realizes she has a fever, so he suggests she take a break. She insists she has no breaks as a maid, but he firmly tells her to rest anyway. When she still refuses, he loudly orders her to sleep in his bed, stopping her from overthinking in her condition. Suddenly, her head spins and she loses consciousness. After some time, she wakes up lying on the bed with a red face. He sits beside her, offering medicine and water, worried about her as the weather keeps changing. Weakly, she mentions that Mizugori drains her stamina. Confused, he searches on his phone and learns it means bathing in cold water as a ritual for better results in exams. He calmly suggests she not worry and advises her to take medicine and rest properly. She then asks for help, which he reluctantly does. She thanks him afterward. Leaving the room, he realizes that in his family house there would normally be many maids for such situations, but now he understands how difficult it is since she is living alone. Thinking she might be alone in handling everything, he decides to inform her family and goes back to her room to tell her. But as he enters, he is startled to find her unwell and dressed lightly for comfort due to her fever, quickly covering his eyes and telling her to be more careful since he is still home. He becomes flustered due to the unusual situation and struggles to respond properly. Having no other option, he brings a cold towel and gently wipes her face. As she regains consciousness and softly calls him Bochama, he immediately stops her, telling her not to use that name while still showing concern for her self-care. She apologizes, and he tells her to clean herself while he looks away. But when she tries to sit up, he quickly turns away, telling her to be careful until he is there. Seeing she still doesn't understand, he says he will come back later and advises her to wear something more proper after that before leaving. He shuts the door behind him, breathing heavily, still shaken by the situation.
Here I am.